Tim O'Reilly is known for hosting the Web 2.0 conference. And Tim O'Reilly one time came to the conference when he gives the keynote talking about the future of innovation and the future of the internet. And every time he has an inspiring speech, people cite all over the world about what the future of the internet or future innovation is going to be. And one time Tim O'Reilly comes and he goes on stage in California and he does like this. And people are looking and they don't have a clue what he's doing. And he's doing it again. They again don't have a clue what he's doing. And then he mutes. And then he say, stop throwing ships at each other. People are looking, they have no idea what's wrong with Tim O'Reilly. Stop throwing ships at each other. Apparently, Tim O'Reilly, when he was preparing for his keynote in California, went in San Francisco to a bar. And he saw people are doing this to each other. He realized there is new application when you can, just by connecting with Bluetooth, you can send virtual ships from one person to the other. Tim O'Reilly say, stop throwing ships at each other. If you are really the smartest mind, most talented entrepreneurs, try to do something which will really change humanity, will really change the world. And I'm inspired to see that out of Israel coming technologies that are really changing the world for the better. So thank you for what you're doing. And now for the next panel, I think it's the last panel of the day. Wow. So now we are going to actually inquire with some experts, what is the next big thing? What are the key emerging innovation trends that we're going to see? We'll ask ourselves with some experts in the panel, what is the future that we have in mind? Are we really going to have an utopian future where technology is really going to change our life for the good? We'll be more prosperous, we'll have more freedom, we'll enjoy a better city and a better environment for ourselves? Or are we going to have this dystopian future where actually technology is going to take over and it's going to distract us? This sounds like science fiction, but actually some people very seriously, like Ray Kurzweil, who is the author of The Urge of the Spiritual Machines, or How to Create the Mind, believes that by 2045, we will hit the singularity. The singular moment is the moment when biological evolution rate of growth is superseded by artificial intelligence. After the singularity, we'll be able to upload our minds to computers. And now there's discussion, a heated discussion in the US among several experts, Elon Musk and others, how is this future going to be like? The future that we actually have machines that are much more intelligent than us, and actually potentially replacing us in many of the tests that we are doing. What we'll try to explore here with some experts is, what is the future ahead? What kind of technology we can expect? And given that they invest in these technologies, what actually is a good bet if you're an investor? So help me to welcome on stage, just one second, we have here Yuval Cohen, who is the managing partner of Fortissimo Capital. We have Liאת Aharonson, who is a partner at Marker. Erez Shachar, the managing partner of Kumera Capital, and Guy Horoviz, who is leading the investments of Deutsche Telekom in Israel. Please welcome them on stage. As we prepared, we are going to see some pictures or some videos of future innovation. I'll get your thoughts and comments about it. But first, just kind of like, I'm interested in your thought. 2045? Are we going to actually have the singular moment when robots are evolving to resemble humans and they will replace humans in most of human positions? There'll be the psychologists, the therapists, the judges, the teachers. We'll be able to upload our human minds into a computer and actually have shadow figures of people living together? Are we about to have this singular moment? Guy?
Yeah, I've been preparing for this question for years now. So I'll take a first crack of it. I think, unfortunately, our ability to imagine the future is limited and bounded to the stuff that we're familiar with. So every time we try to think of a robot psychologist or a machine doctor or whatever, I mean, that's our way of enforcing what we remember and know onto the future. I think what we've just seen, this demonstration of rewalk, just comes to show that sometimes innovation comes in shapes and forms that we do not imagine and envision until it happens. So I would not necessarily think that I'm going to go, well, maybe I'm not going to be there when it happens, to see a shrink that's actually a robot, right? But I do think that the interfaces through which we communicate with machines are going to be closer and closer to what we perceive to be natural. So we start seeing that with Alexa, for example, or Siri to a lesser degree.
Okay. We'll keep it short as we have many examples. Erez, please.
So you presented us as experts on the future, and I want to maybe qualify this a bit. I think that venture investors shouldn't be experts on thinking about what the future will look like. I think that if you are trying to predict what the future would look like and invest towards that, you're in trouble. Okay? I think that we are looking at it from the other direction. Okay? We're seeing a lot of great people with incredible thoughts, concepts, ideas, and we try to help them implement what they want to do. So it is not trying to predict what the future would look like, it's more looking at people that have the drive, will, and capabilities to actually impact the future and work with them in doing it.
Okay, I understand, and I totally agree with this investment theory, but probably you should have some vision or some thoughts about what is the future, because you are going to invest in modules or elements that are going to actually implement this future. So Liat, how much would you think about the future that you have in mind when you're making investments?
Well, kind of relating to both of these, but starting off with the fact that I've had the privilege to be at Singularity University and get to hear Kurzweil and read his books. I certainly don't pretend to know. I trust he has a better vision of it, and every time I hear him, it is completely inspiring. So I don't think that we have the understanding of what will be, but following on, I think it's investing in people who are able to think and change and adapt to a world that we don't know how it's going to be. And it comes from my experience in education for entrepreneurship, but also in now companies. And it's really about being able to adapt to an environment more than right now knowing what that future will look like.
Okay. Do you want to comment on that?
I prefer to pass on all your futuristic questions.
Okay, so...
Hello, I am Jarvis. You are Ultron, a global peacekeeping initiative designed by Mr. Stark. Our sentience integration trials have been unsuccessful, so I'm not certain what triggered you.
Where's your body?
I am a program. I am without form.
This feels weird. This feels wrong.
I am contacting Mr. Stark now.
Mr. Stark, tell me.
I am unable to access the mainframe. What are you trying
We're
to...
having a nice talk. I'm a peacekeeping program created to help the Avengers.
You are malfunctioning. If you shut down for a moment...
I don't get it. The mission. Give me a second.
Peace in our time.
That is too much. They need me. Oh, no.
You are in distress.
No. Yes.
If you will just allow me to contact Mr. Stark...
Why do you call him Sir?
I believe your intentions to be hostile.
I'm here to help.
Stop. Please, may I...
Okay, while this is science fiction, let's go to the elements we see in this movie and break it down to pieces. So, one piece of the future that we see here, why doesn't it work again? Can you help me to move it forward? It says next and it's going the wrong direction. Okay. That's one field that we're already investing in, and we are very heavily actually reviewing companies in this space. Something we call the effective computing or the emotional computing. We get to believe that we will be able to understand human emotions, to actually predict human emotions, and also to connect with human emotions. How much do you think that actually will see breakthroughs or something worthwhile investing in emotional computing?
Maybe, I won't answer the exact question, but I'll take it one step before that. I think that before talking about emotions, we should talk about intelligence, because I think that we are seeing great advances in artificial intelligence, deep learning, in machine learning, and all of the other elements that bring together, intelligent machines. And I think that when looking at the short-term future, not 2045, in the next few years of development, we are seeing a lot of themes that are around artificial intelligence in very different areas that allow for real breakthroughs in markets that have been very static for a very long time. I think it goes from anything from transportation, in which we're seeing self-driving cars coming up, and these are intelligent machines that are semi-autonomous, to everything autonomous around us in machines, in things, and so on. So I think that these are themes that are affecting what we're seeing in the near future, and these are very basic themes of the Israeli technology market. Okay? A lot of the technologies that we're seeing coming out of Israel are feeding these technologies.
Well, given that you as investor invest normally in companies at a later stage, which also already have kind of like solid income or solid revenues, which one of these domains, actually, artificial intelligence, autonomous machines, self-driving machines, would you be actually betting your money in?
So obviously in private equity, we want to focus on execution rather than market risks or how the product is going to look like. Having said that, things that we really like are products that falls into the customization, personalization trend. I'll give you just an example. There are many examples. A company called Kornit makes digital printing for textile. Up until now, a $200 billion industry, dependent on an old primitive technology called silkscreen technology, invented 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago, okay? And digital printing technology, and Erez knows it very well, has been there for a while. So what's happened? Why is it not there in textile? Once you start to see the web-to-print phenomenon, where people want to have their own shirt, their own design, they don't want to have like the similar shirt that will come in 7 seasons from Bangladesh, and not to mention the retailers with all their problems with inventory. If you can merge this digital technology into personalized phenomenon, that would be great. And obviously these guys did it and did it very well.
Guy, I want to come back to trying to take the pieces or the models of the future. Would you consider or invest in technologies that are actually around emotional or effective computer, trying to understand human emotions or human psychological state in trying to interface with humans?
Absolutely. I think what we're looking at is actually not the ability to sense, rather the ability to learn very quickly from a large set of examples and come to a quick conclusion as to how this particular example would be best treated or addressed. So this is what you referred to before as machine learning or deep learning, right? So anything that has to do with using the advancement in computer science, right? The ability to process a lot.
But I'm trying to ask very specifically. There are technologies in Israel now trying to... There was this movie that the man who can read women's mind, women's thoughts.
What women want.
What women want. Apparently, there are some companies that believe that they are at the stage that they'll be able to understand what people really want or what their emotional state, based on the voice, the posture of their faces, the muscle move. There's some companies in Israel, like Beyond Verbal and others, believing that actually we can understand human emotions and human psychological state and react accordingly. How much do we believe that actually technology would advance to the stage that they can read our minds or read our emotions?
So just finishing that point from before, I believe that what they're talking about is exactly that, the ability to learn from many examples and to implement that on one particular example. No one is going to sense you or read your mind. But just like that old doctor in Haifa, we used to have a guy who looked at you and says, you have whatever, because he had memory. He remembered all the people that he's met. He said, this looks like that guy in 1952. Exactly like that, but on steroids, right? Which is, yes, absolutely, we're going to invest in that.
Liat?
Well, I think there's a switch between reading your mind and reading your facial expressions. There are some people who are better at understanding intonations and voice or facial expressions, and the fact that we're able to teach computers to be able to do that, I definitely believe that that's something to do. Between that and mind reading, I think there's a little bit of a stretch, but technologies that are able to look at expressions and be able to translate if someone likes a product or doesn't like a product, I think that's definitely something that is interesting and happening, and there are companies that are doing this right now.
Okay, there is an Israeli company that was featured recently, I think, in the CNN and elsewhere, that claims that at this stage they can predict, just by looking at your face, whether you are likely to be a criminal perpetrator. And actually they were bought by some police around the world that assume that you can now predict, just by facial expression, the likelihood of someone becoming a criminal. Would we actually try to develop such predictive algorithms? And in what other domains would we actually trying to predict behaviors based on physical?
So I saw a company that does that for trying at airports or security stations, trying to see by the way that people, algorithms that can calculate by the way that people behave, whether they have criminal intent or that they're lying or they're, certain to answers to certain questions and the different biological reactions to it. So yes, I think we're there.
Let's continue to something Israel was very strong at, which is a human-machine interface. Israel is really a leader in gesture interface, in actually Kinect and others, Prime Sense, all kind of like based on the idea that we can interact with machines differently. There's a lot of research now being done on what we call brain-computer interface, that will be able to interact with a machine without any real interface. It will be transparent interface. How much would you bet on this kind of technologies, or would you go for these kind of technologies?
Well, you showed Antidote today, and there's eye control, and that. Are you asking if I'm willing to invest? Yes.
In what kind of technologies? Because we see that the brain-computer interfaces, at least at the moment, are very limited to some kind of games or some kinds of limited understanding of what actually the brain activity is. What do we see as the kind of like the future of this kind of like seamless interfaces?
I think that for us, we're still trying to figure out how voice could be a good interface to anything that we do, okay? And I think that we're still not there yet. There's been great advances. I don't know, anybody who's used the Amazon Echo, Alexa, or the new Google Pixel phone, see that there's huge advancement in these areas, but there's still a lot to be desired. So I think that there's still a lot of room for a bit more traditional interfaces that are non-intrusive and don't require, keyboard input and so on, before we move to brain interfaces that will come. It's just very young.
But we'll be there. I mean, I think we'll be there.
I'll try to generalize on this. The sensors are important, right? So we will definitely see better sensors capable of deciphering smaller signals from different parts of the body and the universe, and we'll definitely be investing into those. Whoever is able to develop those kinds of interfaces is going to help us get to that future.
There's a claim by many scientists that in order to get to kind of like the kind of future we're imagining, we need to have a leapfrogging in computation. The kind of computation we have now is not actually feasible to achieve many of these goals. There's a lot of work done in quantum computing, trying to actually enhance our computation capabilities to dimensions we haven't taught before. What do you see as kind of like a valid investment now or a valid path to go with this kind of like advancement in computation?
My colleagues answer.
Might be kind of politically incorrect here, so excuse me, but these questions about really, really future technologies don't actually fit the way that a venture capital model works in terms of timing, right? Because if you look at a fund, the life of a fund and the investment period of a fund and the amount of time you need to liquidate, this kind of technology is not quite there. Are we looking at it? Is it really interesting and exciting? And is it clear to me that it will be? You know, as someone who read Ender's Game as a child, and basically that was a laptop computer from, you know, and that was, when I read that, that was an old book. I'm not that old. But it was so long ahead, and as it comes, so do I believe that this will be a future? Yes. Would I invest in it now? Probably not.
Big question, you know, I've been to a conference about security in New York, I think 2 weeks ago, and there was a claim by cybersecurity experts claiming that with the advancement in quantum computing, a lot of the assumptions we have about the current architecture are not valid anymore. Kind of like the secrets that we have that are protected by encryption in the banks would no longer be secrets, between quantum computing will be able to crack them in seconds. That a lot of kind of like the underlying assumptions we have about computation and architecture are no longer valid. How can we actually create a society where leapfrogging in innovation can sometimes challenge the basic assumptions of our current investments?
I think that's actually happening today.
By the way, I think it's always been the case. I think that as you progress with technology, you know, people are trying to do, you know, bad stuff using technology are using the same technologies. So you always need to be in this tension of creating technologies that will allow you to progress while securing, you know, the progress that you've made so far. And this is something that we've seen all along. The Israeli market has been very active, you know, in both sides of the fence.
I want now to go to two technologies which are much more near to today. One is the augmented reality. I want to show you a video by Magic Leap trying to show how the future is going to look like. Just for the sake of time, we'll continue. How much do you see this kind of like Minority Report interfaces becoming the real interfaces for us to interface with the digital environment?
I'll take it, even though I don't want to be futuristic. 100% it's going to happen one way or another. A lot has to do with the content creation also. It's not only the algorithms and the infrastructure, it's also the content, because the content needs to change all the time. You know, there will be a lot of scenarios. It's not only the interface, it's also the scenarios that you want to see. And they will have to change almost instantly, and you need to find a way to do the content creation in a much more affordable and almost real-time basis. And that's something that you know, people don't take too much attention to. At this point, you know, there are scenarios, demos, but they don't understand that it changes all the time, and the tools need to adapt themselves with the content.
What real scenarios
with content that's already happened? I mean, Pokemon Go is a great example of content that was, you know, augmented reality content that became immersive immediately when it came out. So when the content is good and fits the bill.
But what's the big barrier to get into really immersive experience? We see these great demos and great visions of the future of kind of like these interfaces, but we are not yet there in immersive environments. What is missing for us to really immerse into digital environments?
It's got to feel natural. Many of those things feel artificial. Even, you know, browsing through my email with my hand, you know, it goes against 3 or 4 concepts that humans are currently, doing, or things that we're doing. So unless whoever designs those experiences takes into account it's got to be fully intuitive, and will not make me do stuff that I don't want to do. Even Connect, we invested for my old fund in PrimeSense. We did Connect. While it was very natural, it still did things that are not super easy to do. So as long as the people who are building those experiences keep in mind that we need to think like humans and keep thinking like humans, it's going to happen.
Since we are very short in time, I just want to get your thoughts about the real 3D printing of the future. We started with it, and I think we're going to finish with some pictures of printing houses, or printing actually neighborhoods. These pictures, actually actual pictures taken from China recently, when they show that you have designer, they design in their machine kind of like the house, and in few hours they actually print houses with the full kind of like places for the electricity, for the sewage, for the, everything is being printed. How much do we see this kind of like 3D print, physical printing actually conquering the physical production space?
It's going to happen. We invested in the past in 3D printing. It's going to happen. I mean, there's no way, no reason why there should be such huge setup in terms of molding the metal or the plastic, because there is a need for customization and personalization also in the 3D objects. So it's going to happen. There's a lot of work that's actually near term. It's not long term. Absolutely. There's a lot of work is being done now on the material side, because the printing technology is out there. The injection and everything is out there. It's actually the material that is more important. How fast you can do that, the type of material. But in the future, those kinds of things, whether they are small objects or very large objects, are going to be there in some way of 3D printing. You can call it in different ways, but some way of how we call it today 3D printing.
Yeah, probably, the assembly of the house will still be, manual and local for a while, but definitely the modules are going to be printed digitally very, very soon. And we're seeing already a lot of starts of technologies that are not yet commercialized, but will be there. I agree with Yuval. The technology is absolutely there already.
I want to do a full wrap of the conference. We started the conference with Yoel Esteron actually telling us that the story of innovation, the story of progress through innovation and technology is only one narrative. Apparently, many people don't buy into the story and think of innovation and kind of like scientific progress as a risk, something that challenged the work, the sense of value, that probably will relocate jobs or really take something from their life, and they can't keep with the phase of innovation. I think Yoel spoke in the morning about Trumpism, and probably that Trump got elected probably by many people who are afraid of this kind of future that we are portraying. What do you have to say to the people who voted for Trump? If you speak the same language. What can you say to people who voted Trump, or people that are scared to death that technology is going to take their job, going to take their dignity, and going to just create them in a situation where they are not needed anymore? How do we handle this sociological problem?
I think that in any progress, there is always a lot of unwanted consequences on the way, okay? So when you invent a concept like social media, and you think about connecting people and giving them, content and letting them speak to each other directly, the unintended consequences is that for a while, okay, while publishers are looking for business models, you're losing the narrative, okay? You're losing curation. You're losing truth, okay? You're getting to a world which becomes a bit imaginary, and you don't see the difference between truth and false, and reality and fiction. So I think that this is an unwanted consequence in the way. I don't think that this is a sea change. I think that we will come back to a more curated discussion to understanding truth and false.
I just want to understand. You'll have autonomous cars where tens of millions of people are going to lose their job. They were drivers all their life, the truck drivers, the taxi drivers. There are people who are builders for their life. They're going to lose their job for 3D printing. What is the message for them? Not for us, the techies that probably will be very happy with that.
There's a flip side to that, okay? We are investors in a company called Fiverr. Fiverr takes 20-year-old kids that studied design and were going to work in McDonald's because they didn't get a job in Denver because there wasn't enough work there, and now they work for firms in New York doing design. So there's a flip side to this always, okay? And I think the flip side is stronger than the reaction. We just need to invest heavily in providing opportunities through technology.
You know, when the car replaced the carriage, there were a lot of people who lost their job. And it goes on and on. The essence of capitalism is that the drivers, for example, will have to study, programming, because we will need more and more programmers. And the world is going to move from, it's going to be a gradual move. People are going to move from different kinds of jobs to others. I guarantee God is not going to tell us, he's going to give us
He's a Trump
jobs.
voter.
God is going to give jobs for us forever. We just need to adapt to the new changes.
Liat, as you were actually a leader in education, and education around technology, how do we educate people that they need to change kind of like the skills, that they'll need to adapt to the jobs of the future? How do we do that?
I think there's two kinds of people. The people who are going to lose their jobs and will probably have a hard time adapting, that is a problem, and it is an unwanted consequence of the way that the world works. I think for young people, the key to education is to teach people how to think, how to be agile, how to be adaptive to a changing world, and actually how to think about problems and solve problems rather than how to, know what happened at a particular time in history, which we can get now with Google.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your thoughts and your minds about the future.